spirit of this revolution is not going away.
This is the Ron Paul Liberty Report with Ron Paul, Daniel McAdams, and Chris Rossini.
We are all ambassadors of the Ron Paul doctrine, and it's so simple. Just tell the truth.
An idea whose time has come cannot be stopped by any army or any government.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning into the Liberty Report. With us today, we have Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you this morning.
Happy Monday, Dr. Paul. How are you today?
It's Monday again.
It is
huh?
again, yeah.
Well, good.
Manic Monday.
I wonder if we're one day closer to the end of the war or just numbers adding up. You know, this was supposed to be a short war. All our wars since World War II were supposed to be short.
Yeah.
They said, well, you know, things went well in Venezuela. We own it. It didn't take much to do that. So these wars, yes, you have to accept some of the negatives for it. But I'll tell you what, from what I read and what's going on is there's a lot more people getting a little bit upset about what's going on, especially when they read headlines like this. U.S. deploying additional warplanes to the Middle East as it prepares to escalate Iran war. Could that be true?
Yeah.
Probably, yes. That probably could be true. But I wonder, will there be some Israeli soldiers in there? Because I think Israel is involved in this little debate going on, what we would do with Iran. But you probably have an answer for that, what the numbers are with how many Israelis are protecting American soldiers fighting for their homeland. But anyway, actually, there's been an additional firepower going on recently, but even before this, probably 2 weeks ago, for all we know, they had planned to send more equipment over there. Yeah. And I think when they have these temporary false pauses, it's just to pick up the pieces and let the manufacturers catch up a little bit, and just prepare for the next onslaught. But it still baffles me. I've looked at the war issue for a long time, critical of it. It still just baffles me that the American people put up with it. But Daniel, I think there's a group of people, since this war is still measured in several months, I think the American people are waking up a lot sooner than they decided to end the Mideast war and also the Afghan war, And how about the horrible disaster in Vietnam? It took a long time of spending and killing and destruction. So maybe this is an early start in the American people having a different attitude. But ironically, it introduces a special subject of who are our allies and who's making the complaints about the spending and the Mideast foreign policy. It happens to be not just the good old-fashioned progressive, it's the far left, and they have their agenda too. But if they're against the war and against the war spending, I don't think I'm going to argue with them. But it is something that is ongoing, doesn't make any sense, and I keep looking. You may have the answers. I'm looking for some really positive news here today.
Well, I can't deliver that, Dr. Paul, unfortunately. But, back in 1971, a person who unfortunately didn't learn from his mistakes, and that's John Kerry. Remember, he said, how do you ask a man to be the last person to die for a lie? And that's the truth, and that's what we're seeing now. And we saw over the weekend, now they've admitted 4 more service members have been killed, including a young 19-year-old girl, pretty young girl. Makes you sad, but I think that's a low ball. I think there's a lot more. And if you see that strike that hit the U.S. base in Jordan, it's hard to believe that only a couple people died in that. It was a serious strike, which surprised me, Dr. Paul, because President Trump has said they don't have any weapons, they don't have any military, they don't have any Air Force, they don't have any Navy. Somehow they were able to hit this base really hard and kill a bunch of people. But if you put that first clip up, this is our friend Dave DeCamp wrote this up for Anti-War, of course. U.S. deploying additional warplanes in the Middle East as it prepares to escalate. Now, there are a couple of explanations for the sending additional warplanes, and as I understand it, they're going to be F-16s, F-35s, and some E-6s, I guess. One could be an escalation. That's a reasonable assumption. But the other, and it may be a combination of the two, the other simply may be that there has been the destruction of a large number of U.S. military equipment, including these jets, including F-35s, including F-16s. We do know that some Black Hawks were hit in Jordan. Damaged. We saw the damaged planes, the damaged AWACS a few months ago that were blown to pieces. So damaged Black Hawks, we don't know how many, but a number of them have been damaged. So they may be having to replace that which is damaged, or again, as I said, Dr. Paul, a combination of we need to escalate, we lost some jets, we lost some planes, we lost some copters, we need to send some in. So we don't know exactly what it is, but we do know, as reported by the New York Times, that the U.S. is sending additional warplanes to the Middle East from Europe. So something is happening for sure.
Well, I do want to point out there are some consistencies that are going on in the war, and most of the time we like people to be consistent. But what if they're consistently wrong? So here, one thing I've noticed in this particular war, if there's somebody gets killed, a bomb hit here, and there was a problem, and it looks like it looks like it could have been a bomb from Iran or us, and it goes on, and people say, well, it's all the fault of the Iranians wanting a nuclear bomb. Yeah. Everything is there, and that's the reason it is. But the whole thing is that they don't think that anybody else can do anything about it. So we keep saying, well, blame them. But it's always the same thing. Is they're responsible? And guess what? More Americans are starting to realize because the current history is moving quickly, and maybe they're starting to realize that maybe we did, participate in starting this war, and maybe we did accept the pressure, from Israel, and I think that evidence is pretty good. Sure, right now you don't see any Israeli soldiers. If they're maybe they've turned over a new leaf. Maybe they're not much interested in expanding their empire, in the Middle East.
Yeah. Well, it's the death of these four now, in addition to the other, I think now it's 17 total. Again, the number I'm sure is higher than that. But the Pentagon is using the deaths of these to escalate the war. And Hegseth himself said, if you kill Americans, we will hunt you down and we will kill you. Yeah, but the Americans, obviously, we feel terrible that they were killed. But why were they killed? They were killed because Hegseth and Trump sent them 6,000 miles away from home to kill Iranians. So the idea is you should just sit there and let us kill you because we want to kill you. Of course not. They shot back. And it doesn't mean that we're happy that these Americans were killed. They shouldn't have been killed. But Trump and Hegseth did it just as much as the Iranians did, and they're using this now to escalate, though. We've got to send in more people to avenge the people that were killed, and then more of them will be killed, and they'll avenge them, and on and on it goes. That's the plan. And I'll go to this next one. U.S. is planning for a wider war, according to the article. A U.S. official familiar with the administration's internal discussions told the Washington Post. The official acknowledged that the U.S. wasn't in the best position to escalate due to the depletion of air defenses and other munitions. Quote, we do not have enough to safely sustain operations, and I don't think the White House is aware of that, the official said. Now, that is one of the most shocking things that I have seen, Dr. Paul. People know that we're not capable of expanding the war, of intensifying the war because we don't have the weapons. Well, that's why the base was hit. I saw the two hypersonics hit it. Unbelievable. We're not able to shoot them down. It doesn't matter. Trump and Hegseth don't care. We're going to do it anyway, even though we don't have the weapons to protect our service members. It doesn't matter. As you suggested earlier, Netanyahu wants us to be fighting this war, and so they darn well are going to do it. At least that's what it seems like to me, Dr. Paul.
Yes, and I think that this process is going to continue until people wake up and say, "Why in the world are we there?" The president. I think. Well, everybody's still studying him. Yeah, exactly. Where he's coming from, but he ultimately sends out all the orders, but I think a remarkable event occurred after the Ayatollah was murdered.
Yeah.
And then Trump, he reflects. He always has something, and it's always going to be suiting his needs. And so he did answer that. But the whole thing is he admitted, that he was surprised.
Yeah.
Why? Where these people come from? So numbers do have those are crowds bigger than he had.
Yeah, 43 million. Yeah, but, although he may dispute that, right? But yeah, I mean, this just shows an absolute failure. Maybe it's a failure of intelligence, but maybe our intelligence community knew this all along, and Trump just didn't want to hear it. I think that's more likely because we have some very smart people that do intelligence analysis in the U.S. Despite a lot of our problems with how the CIA is used, there are smart people. But remember what happened with Tulsi Gabbard last June when she was the National Intelligence Director, and she said Iran is continuing to not pursue a nuclear weapon. And Trump said, I don't care what she says. I'm listening to the Mossad. I'm listening to Bibi. And he listened to him, and guess what? They were wrong, she was right, and I bet there's a heck of a lot of people in our military intelligence who know it as well. But Trump doesn't want to hear it. He doesn't want to hear it.
Well, that doesn't sound like a very objective decision to make, and it's just justifying their own mind. But Trump he's great at this, and there are qualities that when you're really in a desperate situation, that you have a leader that can motivate people.
Yeah.
But what if the motivation is negative? So I think it's back to the big question that we ask and we answer, and there's more and more people, are thinking about it. But I think it's one of the reasons why we get this far along. Who started the mess?
Yeah.
I imagine there's 70% of the Americans would say, well, the Iranians did. They were going to bomb. They were making a nuclear weapon. They were going to get us. And they always disobey. They broke the rules. They wouldn't even follow on the agreement. They had to gradually, move in a better direction. And of course that was canceled. And there were some positive steps when they tried to talk about. I think the one answer was that the Iranians never violated the agreement when the treaty was in place.
Yeah, the JPCOA. That's true, nor did they violate the Memorandum of Understanding. So now, we talked about how we got into this war because of fake Israeli intelligence as opposed to Tulsi Gabbard's accurate intelligence. But here's to go to that next clip. Now, if you understand that's what happened, this should make everyone even more concerned. The Israeli newspaper Haaretz reported that while Israel hasn't been directly striking Iran, and I highlighted this part, it has been supporting the war by providing the U.S. with intelligence and in other ways. The report said that Israel's less visible role was, quote, a blessing for Israelis, since it, quote, reduces the risk of casualties and allows daily life to continue largely as normal without midnight sirens, trips to bomb shelters, or major disruptions. And now that is the answer to the question you asked when we started the program, Dr. Paul. What's Israel up to? They're just sitting back and enjoying it. We're doing all the fighting and dying and paying for it, and they're just kicking back. Thanks, guys. Keep it up. Here's some juicy new intel. Here's where you need to bomb next time. That's what's happening, and I think Americans are getting sick of it, Dr. Paul.
The Israelis have hinted, or at least mumbled, that they could get involved, more directly. Not that they're not involved now, but they're gliding through this. But in a way, if you say, well, Israel should pay more of these bills, where would they get the money? From the American taxpayer. Middle-class Americans are suffering because this money is passed around. And then you say, well, where is the tax? Why don't they just tax? But that's what inflation is all about, is to guide the tax to the middle class who don't have even though the numbers are there, they aren't able to compete with, the big show who runs the military-industrial complex. But they have some conditions that Israel would, probably involve if there was a direct attack on them. These are theoretical because who knows what they would do. Signs that Iran is preparing to attack Israel. Okay, if they attack or they have a sign, that's going to justify them. But that's not their decision. Their decision of when to go in is a little bit different than that. As long as somebody's doing the work that they maybe should be doing if they thought they had a real security problem. So if there was a special request to come in, but if the United States demanded it or something, but that's not going to happen either. We're almost like a servant.
Yeah, almost like a servant, worse in a way. But now here's the other thing though, and you actually wrote about this week. It's coming out in your weekly column. But this is why we suspect that they're lying about deaths. Unfortunately, we know that they lied about the destruction of the bases. Remember, it was revealed, wow, those bases were destroyed a lot worse than we thought. CNN did an investigation using satellite photos. We suspect they're lying about deaths. And now we know, if you go to that next clip from the New York Times, we know that they're lying about injuries. This is from the New York Times, I think yesterday. I can't see it. Pentagon withheld dozens of U.S. military injuries in the Iran war. Central Command is not required to release information about injured troops, especially when they quickly return to duty, a military official has said. So if we know now that they are withholding dozens of injury reports, you could probably safely say that dozens is hundreds,
Well, to institute and reinvigorate the principle of telling the truth doesn't seem to happen very well when war is going on. The first victim of a war
exactly.
is telling the truth. But the truths are there all along. Even before the guns open fire, there's been plenty of lying that goes on, in foreign policy and domestic policy.
Yeah.
I don't know why. There must be a disease there that when you get involved in politics and you have political power, it seems like they tell more lies than they might if they were, practicing medicine or something a little more peaceful.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the result of all this is, again, the poll numbers of Trump are horrible. Here's an article that came out in the Washington Post. It's a brand new poll that they did, I think, last week. If you go to that next clip, Trump approval stuck in the 30s amid pessimism on Iran and the economy, a new poll finds. Go to that next one. Americans give President Donald Trump broadly negative reviews for the handling of key issues. They say they're strained by the cost of living and are pessimistic that the administration's start and stop negotiations with Iran will lower gas prices or prevent the Iranians from developing a nuclear weapon. According to a Washington Post Ipsos poll, strikingly, Trump has lost enthusiasm among many fellow Republicans, a core source of his power for more than a decade. Reduced enthusiasm among these base supporters jeopardizes his party's hopes of retaining control of Congress in November's midterms. So the one thing that's dragging him down right now, pretty much above everything else, two of them are related: the war on Iran and the economy. The war on Iran is feeding to the destruction of the economy, and they didn't have to do either of those things.
There were some people that thought, well, you should only be concerned about immigration. And I'm concerned about immigration too, and there is a problem. But the way they rated these, I think surprised a few people, thinking that they wouldn't have thought that immigration would be in third place.
Yeah, it's interesting now. I mean, that was the top thing. Well, let's look at a couple of the charts from this. That next one is important if we put this up. Right here. Now, the number that strikes me, that basically the disapproval is at 37% overall. That's been relatively steady here. But the thing that strikes me, Dr. Paul, is those who approve strongly of President Trump's handling his job, and that's that dark line on the right. That has shrunk from upper 20s now down to 15%. So that's the core, that's the base, that's the MAGA. Those are the people who are in Trump's camp. And look, that has shrunk down to 15%. That's a tiny portion of the electorate now who believes strongly that he's doing a good job. I'd be worried about those numbers if it was me.
Yeah, but he's not up for re-election. But it's a big deal in the election because it's known that these midterm elections are very significant, and it is a reflection of the president. So it's going to be a vote on Trump, and I think he knows that, but I don't think I've heard the answer to it because even the immediate correction for these problems will not be exactly popular. It's sort of like needing to tell a patient that they have incurable cancer.
Yeah.
And yet it isn't that bad because some of this stuff is curable. It's just that there's going to be a little bit of, some people are going to be upset about losing their freebies, and other people saying, hey, this is not a bad idea, and give it a time. So it's not going to be easy to change the attitude of the people because they've been taught that. We've been teaching the people that that's if you need stuff, you go to your congressman. He's worked for you. And what about how many times have we seen, and we see it currently now, how many of these people vote, for spending under the Republicans for these conditions that they don't even. I know they don't believe it, and if it were a Democrat, they'd never vote for it.
Yeah.
But then the people who do that are accused of being treasonous. That they're just grandstanding, and they won't admit that they're the ones who are on the right track, making an attempt the best way possible to maybe take their oath of office seriously.
Yeah, that would be something. That would be refreshing change. Well, here's one of the charts from that poll I've saw it around X quite a bit, and it's pretty dramatic. The public is more critical of Trump's management of the economy and Iran than immigration. Now, you mentioned that as well. The situation with Iran, disapproval is 69%. Almost 7 in 10 Americans disapprove of how the president is handling Iran. And you also have a 65% disapproval on the economy. And I would suggest, Dr. Paul, that the two of those are related. Because if we weren't involved in this stupid Iran war, we would be enjoying gasoline probably in the low $2, $2.50, $2.20, something like this, instead of, as I just drove into the studio today, $3.69. I paid $2.99 2 weeks ago. So those two are related. And the Post says, during the last year of Trump's first term in office, most Americans rated Trump's handling of the economy positively. That's amazing, I'm saying. That has changed significantly in his second term. Today, the economy has become a political liability. Can you imagine? It didn't have to be this way. Most people thought he handled the economy well the first time. He could have handled it better this time, and everything would be coming up roses.
You talk about the oil, and you talk about oil quite frequently, but it's messier also because there's emergency oil there, supposedly, in the reserves and petroleum reserves, and there had been a lot, but they're done out of bare minimums. And so you have these, the natural thing of supply and demand, but then you have the mix-up of transporting it because of this war. Well, who started this war? Who caused these problems? Oh, I don't know who this is. I would have run for Congress and find out.
Yeah, you better. You better get over there. Well, I'm going to close out today by, if you put that last clip up, with an announcement, actually. Our conference coming up on September 5th. Very excited about this, Dr. Paul. I sent this out to subscribers of the Ron Paul Institute, and you reposted it very graciously, saying you have your tickets to my 10th annual DC conference. The announcement is that we are going to get a special address from Tucker Carlson, our good friend Tucker Carlson. You've been on his show a couple times. Now, he will not be there in person. He has a family obligation, as I wrote in this, but he's going to be sending us a special address, And you remember what he said a couple of weeks ago when we did the show. He's done with the GOP. He's done with the Republicans. He thinks we need a third party. He thinks we need a new direction. I'm hoping and I'm guessing that he's going to talk a little bit about what his plans are. And this address will be available to nobody else but those people sitting in the room on the 5th of September, Labor Day weekend. There's a link in the description to this show in X, Rumble, and YouTube. Get those tickets. That's not the only great surprise we have, but this is going to be a lot of fun to listen to what Tucker has to say. The front row seat at the revolution is our theme this year, and who better than Tucker Carlson to tell us where is the revolution going to take us next?
Very good. And I know you put a lot of effort into this, and I brag about how great it is, and I'm just a watcher because Daniel does all the legwork, but we do have a good time there. I set all the rules. If you come, you have to have fun. If you come, you have to be willing. If you have an epiphany and that you understand what liberty is all about, we ask you to follow through and spread the message, because we can't depend on the military-industrial complex to straighten out that matter. So there's a lot to do, but I think I can safely say that most everybody that comes, are grateful and they like it and they enjoy it. And some are new people and they are, very enthusiastic because they had not been exposed to these ideas. So I think they're a lot of fun. They're very important, and it does, in a way, follow an admonition that somebody that I had a lot of respect for, and that was Leonard Reed. He believed in smaller conferences. But if you could get a real huge crowd, you're not talking, well enough. The crowds are okay, and they have meaning and that sort of thing. But Leonard really believed in a smaller crowd where people get to know each other, talk to people, and people learn from it. So I hope to see you there, and I encourage everybody to continue the fight for liberty, and please return to the Liberty Report soon.
Thanks for watching the Ron Paul Liberty Report. Like and subscribe to help spread the message. And until next time, live free.
This country is in a